Now that we have the layout working for the Farkle game, now to actually make things actually work. To begin with, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab all the pieces of the layout into my main activity, my Java file here, and basically create a variable for each one so I can refer to them by the variable name rather than having to do the find by ID stuff. So the first thing I'd like to do is set up the image button array. Buttons. So there should be 6 of them, unless something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. That will be from Android widget. The next thing I need to do is grab the buttons themselves. So I'm going to create a roll button, which eventually down here I'm going to set to be that particular ID number. So while I'm at it down here, let's actually start doing this. So I have to set my activity main, and then I need to go through and actually add each one individually. So button 0 is going to be in my layout. This image button is image button 1. So I'm going to cast find view by ID. And then it's going to be r.id.imageButton1. So now I have a way to refer to this particular button without having to go through each individual one. So 1 will be image button 2, so on. 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now the roll button. And this will be r.id.button1. Because in the layout down here, when I actually got to the actual button itself, there was button 1 here, and then 2, 3, and 4. Then we have text views 1, 2, and 3 as well. So I need a button score and a button stop. Then I'm going to go ahead and create the text areas as well. So text view, current score, I'm going to abbreviate this TV because I'm actually going to have a variable that keeps track of my current score as well. This is an Android widget. And I need one for my total score. And then finally, I need one for the current round. So this is going to be very similar for score and stop. So that's score, that's stop, button 2, and button 3. I need to get variables assigned for the text views. And so instead of a button, that will be a text view. It will be text view 1. Similar thing for the others. So we have a total and a score and a current round. Which are going to be 2 and 3. So now that I have these, I can actually do something with them. The other thing that I want to do is I want to make sure I add listeners for all of these things so that I can actually respond to them being clicked upon. So let's do a for loop that goes through the buttons. So buttons, let's change this to A so it's a little clearer on the screen. Dot set on click listener this. This means that I have to make sure I implement on click listener. which means I need to import the one that has to do with the view, not the dialog interface. And it's going to ask me to implement that as well, which adds the on-click down here. Roll and score and stop are also going to need this. So this is going to be score, and this is going to be stop. So down here is where I'm going to actually deal with that. All right, so now that I have these things, I can actually start thinking about the game itself. So to begin with, I'm going to want to make sure that the only thing I can do is click on the roll button. So the score and stop buttons should be disabled. And then all of these buttons up here should also be disabled. So let's do, well, at the beginning, let's make sure that all of those are disabled. So it probably makes sense to do it right here after the listener. Set enable to false. I'm going to do the same thing with score and stop. So let me make sure that all of that worked before I go any further. It launches very slowly. So now when I hit the roll button, I can do that, but notice score, stop, and all these image buttons are disabled. All right, so that's kind of cool. There's going to be a couple other things that I want to do for setup. I just realized one thing I'd like to do is I'd also like to set the background color of these buttons. So there's three possible states that they're in. They are either hot dice, which can be rolled. There are ones that you select to be scored, and then there's basically disabled ones that are locked. I need some way to keep track of that. So I think I'm going to have an int array up here, which is going to be the button state. And they can all start at zeros to have them basically be able to be rolled again. I'm going to create some constants for these. So the hot die number is 0, which basically means it's allowed to be rolled. I'm going to have one which is a score die, which is going to be a 1. And then finally I need a locked. So I'm going to use these to keep track of which state all of those are in. By default, since this is going to initialize them all to 0, they'll all be ready to be rolled. Something else I'm probably going to want is something that sets all of these, the images that these buttons have. It would be nice if I didn't have to do a find by ID thing for the drawable objects as well. So I think I'm actually going to keep track of all of those drawables. Technically they are just ints. So let's call these die images. Now these are independent of one another, by the way. So all the button could have the number 6 die image. That is a possibility. So now that I have all of these things, I should probably create some sort of background color so I can tell the difference. What I'd like to do is hot die are going to have just a light gray background. Score die I'm going to set as red, and then lock die I'm going to set as blue. I can do this by saying buttons a dot set background color. And light gray is the one I'm going to use. So now if I run this real quick, so notice kind of this pearly gray that it had before. Now it's a complete background. It's still a button though, throughout.